What is conditioning? You may be familiar with the story of Pavlov and his dogs. This is a popular one to explain conditioning. If you're not familiar with it, look it up, and I'll tell you a little bit about it. So, Ivan Pavlov, Ivan Pavlov, Ivan. I'm from America. I don't know how to pronounce things. All right, so he was a scientist of sorts. I don't know whether he studied biology or something like that. I don't know. I don't remember the details. I can't be bothered with details. I'm an American, remember? Facts and science. All right, I'm going off on a tangent there. Science is replication. The scientific method says you identify the question. This is what I want to figure out. This is how I'm going to do it. This is how I did it. You try it. That's science. And then I get your story, or I get my story, you get my story of that, and you say, okay, so I see that you had this question that you planned to figure out, find some data to support it or go against it, whatever. You made a method to answer that question, then you did carry out the method, and here's how you did it, and now I'm going to try it myself. I'm going to replicate it. If I can replicate it, then that lends credence to whatever it is that you figured out. If I can't replicate it, well, then I can't say yes or no that what you found was accurate because I can't find it myself. But if I can find it, then I've got some credibility going. So then I replicate the study, and then someone else does, and someone else does. And so that's science, replication of somebody else's hypothesis and method. Now, if I can't replicate it because I don't have the understanding, the skills, or the materials, then I have to take it on your word or someone else's word that said that they replicated it. Now, if I'm trusting of those sources, there you go. That's faith. It still comes down to faith. So when we throw around science as though it's science says, and then that's it. It's not that way. Unless you've replicated it yourself, you're taking it on faith. It's the way it is. So faith in science. Think about that one. Expand your mind. Okay, so conditioning. Pavlov was studying salivation function in dogs, something to do with digestive process is what his study was about. And something in his method was that he fed the dogs, but he had these apparatus set up in the dogs' mouths. I don't know what that was like, some kind of Bane mask perhaps, but it would measure the levels of salivation. And so they would ring a bell, and the guy would bring the steaks out to feed these dogs, and they'd measure the salivation as the dogs are eating. But it got to some point along this practice, they were doing this every day, that he discovered that the salivation process, saliva was in their mouths before they even ate the steaks, before they could even smell the steaks. Before the steaks were presented to the dogs, they had saliva building up in their mouths. And he discovered, or he hypothesized it was because of the bell. They'd ring this bell every time they brought the food out. And so he figures out somehow that you ring the bell, the dogs start to salivate. Why? Because of conditioning. That they paired an unnatural stimulus with a natural response. So the dogs smell or see the food, and their digestive system engages. You ring the bell and then present the food, and the digestive system engages. So the dogs started to pair the bell with the digestive system starting because they had the natural stimulus in the middle there. But then they were able to take that natural stimulus away and ring a bell, and the dogs would salivate. Now, you can't find a dog in nature that you ring a bell and they're going to have saliva start to produce because there's no reason for it. It doesn't make sense. It's not natural. But if you've paired it with the natural stimulus, then you can get the natural response off an unnatural stimulus. And that's an element of conditioning. But when we talk about conditioning of other behaviors and stuff like that, and with addiction, it's the same kind of idea that when two things happen together, they're more likely to happen together in the future. So when you ring the bell, put the food, and then the saliva, you can take that middle element out, but you still get those other two things because it happened together. Because those two things happened together over and over and over and over again, it started to happen on its own. And so there's different levels of conditioning, and I don't want to get into all that because I don't remember all of the details on it, and I'd sound like a moron. And that's not what I want. So, but I just told you my secret. So I won't get into all that to try and save face. That's enough of an understanding of conditioning, I think. But that Pavlov, if you're not familiar with Pavlov, then go back to high school, because I don't know, I feel like that's pretty basic. Maybe not. Okay, here's me projecting. I'm trying to tear you down because I'm embarrassed that I don't know the proper details of the stuff I learned 10 years ago in school. I digress. Okay, so you forgive me, I forgive you. Okay, cool. But if you don't know about Pavlov, you can go look it up. There's plenty of sources where you can find out more details and the accurate details on that. But I don't know. Whatever. Do what you want to do. But as far as conditioning, in our brains, our brain cells activate when we have a thought or an action. Anything that our bodies do is probably a brain cell activating. And these are just microscopic little cells that communicate one to another, and they're linked between receptors, sense organs, sense receptors, and then output. So it's like input and output. And so the input of my skin, tactile sensations, are all linked into my brain. They're then linked into outputs. So like this morning I was making bread, and so I was heating up some water for the yeast, and I'm trying to get it to the right temperature, because I was doing this the other day, and I think I got the water too hot, and I killed the yeast. Don't tell anybody. We ate it anyway, but the bread didn't rise the way it was supposed to. So I'm trying to get the temperature right. So I got a candy thermometer in the pot with the water, heating it up, trying to get it between 105 and 115 degrees or whatever it was. I think it was that range. And I was adjusting the thermometer, and it's glass. Candy thermometer is glass clipped onto the thing, and it was hot, and I wasn't thinking about that. And so I touched it and I quickly moved my fingers away. So in that process, the input from my fingers sensed heat to an uncomfortable level, sent that signal up to my brain, which then sent the signal back down to my arm, well, or somewhere around here, to pull my hand away. And so it's input to output. And so there's a bunch of neurons that were involved with that. A whole lot of little brain cells that all along this whole path is just, it's chemical and electrical signals that are communicating between cell to cell. I'm watching myself. That's why I'm looking over here. I'm seeing my screen on my iPad, but here's the camera, and I try to look over there, but then it's uncomfortable because then I feel like I'm talking to somebody but not looking at them, but it's me. Okay, so a lot of little brain cells. Now, the more often these cells speak to one another, the more likely they are to speak to each other in the future. The connection becomes stronger, like a muscle that you constantly use grows. A pathway in the brain tends to do that too. I don't remember the person's name who came up with what fires together wires together. That's thrown about with neuroscience all the time, saying that if brain cells are constantly in connection and communicating in the same line, then they're more likely to continue to communicate in that line. And I think there's elements of the receiving arms and sending arm of the cells increase, more sites open up for them to communicate between, from cell to cell. But the I don't know what all the physical elements of it are, but the point is that communication network becomes stronger. It's like you're increasing your access points or increasing your wire gauge so that the communication can travel faster. A hose, think about like a hose. If you have a real narrow garden hose, you can transfer only so much water. But if you increase the diameter of that hose, and assuming the pressure is good too, but if you increase the diameter of the hose, you can get a lot more water through a garden hose compared to a fire engine hose. And so I'm not going to say in a similar fashion, but something like that with the brain, the connection becomes stronger. And that would be a form of conditioning. The more often we do a thing, the more likely we are to do it again in the future, because you're pairing together all of the elements of it. And so you become conditioned to respond a certain way or whatever. And that then, if we're acting on our conditioning without awareness, then it's like we're on autopilot. And so the body then essentially is living itself without the mind. And that saves time in a lot of areas, but it can also be problematic because the body might not have the same goals as the mind does. And it might be weird to think about the body and the mind separately like that, but there seems to be evidence of that. So awareness can be a way to help break down the autopilot conditioning of the body. And I'm so itchy. My nose. Now this is across 3 videos. I'm making 3 videos right now, and I'm itchy in all of them. I'm going to look like I'm just an itchy guy. It's dry. It's winter. It's cold outside. It's like, I don't know. It was 17 degrees when I left the house this morning. And my knuckles will crack in the cold like this because it's so dry. I'm not very good about incorporating lotion or something into my hands. Sometimes I do when it starts to bleed. Is that weird to talk about on a YouTube video about conditioning? Everything's weird. Life's weird. Should we just talk about life now for a little while? Let's do that. No, it's not. I'm going to end this video because I can't. My nose itches. So conditioning. I don't think I answered that. I don't think I had a question. I don't remember I don't know why I started this one, but conditioning. I guess my point is, if you don't know what conditioning is, go look it up. Wow. I'm not very good at this, am I? That's all right. Just getting started. It'll get better or worse. It doesn't, either way. It's all right. So the takeaway is that the more often you do something, the more likely you are to do it. There we go. That's something useful. So if you are doing something frequently and you don't want to keep doing that frequently, you got to reduce the frequency in which you do it. And how do you do that? Go back to the last video talking about the thoughts, changing your thoughts. Change your thoughts, change your choices, change your actions, change your personality, change your personal reality. So that's how we can break our conditioning. Become aware of what we're doing and why we're doing it. Mindfulness. That's what mindfulness is all about. Be present in the moment. Increase your awareness. Breaks your conditioning. So that you can then create new conditioning. You break your old conditioning so you can create new conditioning, or you break your old conditioning with new conditioning. But if you incorporate awareness with it, then you are conditioning yourself to a new routine, but you're doing it with purpose and intention. And that's the benefit of keeping awareness in there. So, what a mess this video was. But that's okay, because I talked for 10 minutes and my throat, 12 minutes, and my throat hurts now. All right. Thanks for watching.